right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Night 2. It's another special edition of the Bulluminati podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Bond. Joining alongside me, Seth Varnadore, Robert Steeg. Boys, it has been one hell of a day for your South Florida Bulls. Head coach Alex Golesh came through with quite possibly one of the best transition classes I can remember in recent history. Now, don't quote me that it's the best transition class, but holy cow, things couldn't have broken any better for Golesh and his crew as we wrap up the National Signing Day here this evening in Tampa. Seth, first thoughts out of the gate. How impressed are you by this staff? If they were here for basically a month and a half, and what they were able to do with this first class of theirs.
Yeah, we talked last night in our preview kind of what we thought a successful day would be. I thought just getting some of these big names on campus was a success, and I felt that if they got one of the guys they were targeting today, it would have been a successful day. They got two we talked about last night that we thought pretty good, and they also got one of Sean's dark horse candidates. So they really went kind of 3 for 4 today. Riles was the lone guy that they didn't sign that they seem to be targeting today, and he was the guy that we kind of knew that was coming. So to close on the other three, really successful day. And then when you kind of look at the last week in total, I think they got five or six guys in the last week, all pretty good players. We talked about them last night. We'll talk more about the guys that signed specifically today, a little bit more, but a really successful day. Really good close, strong finish to a first class.
Steve, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it was a culmination of the hard work that the staff kind of put in for the last 2 months, really. I mean, from the get-go, and Golesh really touched on it, was, from day one of coming in and all the work that he had to do on top of, having to build the staff and having to, get support staff in place and have exit interviews and talk with these guys and continue relationships and everything like that. You had to balance recruiting at the same time. And they did that very effectively, and it's strange to see the dynamic of which Golesh chose to kind of attack this and to work through what were perceived problems by the previous staff. Was that, during that transition period, it was like, okay, we just got to get these guys in. Like we have to, just, they had like a checklist. We need 2 wide receivers. We need a quarterback. We need a running back. And they just kind of went through that of like what your typical class would look like. But instead, Golesh, told the media and told everyone today that, when he got this, he looked at the scholarship distribution by position and saw that there was only 7 scholarship offensive linemen on the roster. And I think that was probably his wake-up call of recruiting, was like, oh shit, like we had guys leave. And that's the main priority, is replacing those guys that left. And you can see that in how the class was built out. I think there was 22 offensive guys, 6 defensive recruits, and then 2 special teamers. And for most USF fans, that's not where you thought that the distribution would go. The offense was really good last year. The defense was really bad. You want to replace guys on defense. But in actuality, they lost all basically notable contributors off that offense, from the offensive line to the receivers, some running backs and everything. So if you think Brian Battie out, Xavier Weaver out, Jimmy Horn out, they had to go out and they had to find someone to replace them. Naquan Wright in, Jaquan Smith in, Tyree Kelly in. Like, you had to replace those before you could even start assessing your own roster. It's amazing how they did that in such a short period of time like that.
Right. And we kind of talked about it last night prior to Golesh's press conference. Obviously, is there was that article, I think it was Andrew Irvin's, we mentioned that 8 of the top 11 primary starters or contributors on defense are back, and for how bad the defense was, and there's the clip going around, oh, they were 130th. No, they were actually 131st, but who's counting?
He forgot about James Madison. That's all right.
Yeah,
a lot of people did.
There's who cares? 34th offensively in S&P plus. If we're just going straight by the numbers, but you can't process out an entire defense in one season. You just got to kind of take your lumps, hope that there's an improvement. Even if you go from 130, there's 2 more FBS teams now this season.
Yeah, I believe so.
So by all intents and purposes, go from 133
Get the 100
to like 115 and almost maintain offensively. I think you're in a better position. We've talked about it ad nauseum throughout. Basically, the entire precursor to the 2022 season was just don't be god awful on defense, and they actually went backward.
It got worse.
They got so much worse. All you've got to do is just not be the last. Hashtag not last. It worked for baseball. Why can't it work for football's defense?
And it wasn't like they were last by a little bit. You look at some of these advanced stats; they were off of the graph compared to literally so low. In a strata all by themselves. I thought, before we kind of get to the players, if you guys haven't watched Golesh's press conference today, I thought it was really interesting, really informative to the way he's thinking about things. And he strikes me as a guy he strikes me as a smart guy, first of all. And he also strikes me as a guy that's really confident and thus has a plan and is really confident in his plan. The way he explained it today was interesting. I also thought he kind of addressed every issue people seem to have with kind of the way they went. So I thought that was really interesting. I can throw up some clips if we want to. I've got some timestamps of some stuff where I thought he said some interesting things.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let me get that. So we'll throw up some clips of him from today.
I'll answer a quick question real quick before we kind of jump into that. Is actually no, because it's gonna be a more long-winded answer. Go into the clips.
The on 3 and 24/7, that one.
Yeah.
All right, so here, this is a first clip where he's talking about kind of their process, because everyone's kind of like, what? They're only got signed 6 guys on defense, and he kind of addresses that a little bit here early. Let me put the volume on.
Portal coming up end of April, beginning of May. I'm excited about that period because portal coming up end of April, beginning of May. I'm excited about that period because we would have gone through spring ball at that point and had an idea of what is available, what is left, and honestly what our needs are. But we got a bunch of guys we've added. It's been.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting that he's already got, and this is something if you're on the Discord, this is something we kind of surmised that. Listen, they're going to take what they can get quality-wise in this first group. If they find a guy that fits defensively, they're going to take him. But they probably want to see how some of these guys look in spring before they start filling scholarships. So, and that kind of, he seems to be of the same mind. I think he kind of says something about that, about here-ish.
The spring transfer portal period will allow us to then actually say, scrap the numbers. Don't worry about the numbers. Where are the actual holes in terms of where we're not good enough? Because 130th in the country would not be good enough at this point. So where are the holes to take us from 130th to better? And then figure it out from there.
So that was kind of, he talked initially, like Steeg was saying, initially he wanted to make sure he kind of had some balance in terms of scholarships, in terms of position specific numbers. Like the comment we have here, he mentioned something about they have 14 safeties on the roster, scholarship safeties on the roster. They have 7 linemen when he came in. So I probably, and I think he said it would be malpractice or some negligence, I think may have been the word he used, to recruit more safeties when you've got that many on scholarship right now.
And Seth, how many safeties play?
It depends on if you call a nickel a safety. Probably no, but typically 2.
And it would be downright criminal if you only had 7 offensive lineman scholarship players, correct?
Especially going into a spring football period where you'd like to have, at worst, and this is at very worst, like you could probably barely practice with 10, 2 full teams. You need to hit that threshold. So there are things like that where that's kind of why has not gone to that defensive, kind of the defensive thing, or
Yeah.
And he says something here too that's interesting.
Before you click on that and start it, there's also the piece on defense where, and we've talked about it. It would be a legitimate excuse if Jeff Scott hadn't wasted and used up all of his excuse making. Is the defense was so atrociously injury plagued last season?
Yes,
you're forcing walk-ons to actually, play. You brought in a guy basically off the street. The dude who played at Armwood and like bounced around, Jabril Glaze, who was a commit like in 2010, or I mean, he was so long ago out of the recruiting cycle. He just, you had to bring bodies in at some point because you miss out on 2 guys who couldn't get qualified academically or couldn't stay in class when they even got on campus. So now you're scrambling around, and then injuries start piling up. Rashad Cheney, you lose Rashad Cheney, who was basically your best interior defensive lineman for the season. You lose a bunch of guys. Dwayne Bowles missed a bunch of time. Antonio Greer missed time with an injury, and then his father died. The secondary is beat up. So if you're Golesh coming into spring ball, you're at least like, all right, if we're healthy, it can't be as bad, and we'll plug and play on this side and see what's what. And then we'll use the second transfer portal period as a fix. But as we've mentioned, man, the offensive side of the ball was just kind of decimated by graduations, transfer portal. Jimmy Horn's over in Colorado. Xavier Weaver's still out there doing his thing, hasn't found a home yet. But
he's in the phantom zone right now.
He's in the phantom zone right now. He is at Auburn. Dustin Hall is at Duke. So you're trying to figure it out. I think Christian Helms or someone is at Middle Tennessee.
Holden Willis.
Holden Willis.
Christian Helms he came back, right?
Yeah, he came back. Christian
he's
Helms
back, baby.
Yeah.
Thank God. Chris Carter's at Tulane. So you're missing a bunch of guys on the offensive side of the ball. So you have to replace those. So, and I think downright criminal is not a strong enough statement for what this offensive line room was going to look like going into spring if they didn't address it. And he even said as much, we're still not the number I want for scholarship offensive line. Yeah. We're still under that threshold.
Yeah. And on the defensive side of the ball, Todd Orlando. So if, again, this is a great one here. This is on the USF Athletics YouTube page, but they also have interviews with Todd Orlando, Joel Gordon, and Golesh, just in the indoor facility, just one-on-one interviews and talking to them about signing day. And Orlando's was kind of interesting from this angle as well. He basically said, we came in, we watched film on everybody, and we kind of saw, okay, what do we have to have to run our defense? What do we need more of or better of immediately? And that was like ends, those hybrid linebacker defensive end guys, and some corners, I think he said.
Yep.
So what they go out and get in the portal initially for guys that could come in and be in the spring? They went out and got Lloyd Summerall and Harris, right, the guy from Texas, and they went and got some corners as well in the portal. So they address their immediate needs in the portal, and then they're going to kind of see what happens in spring. And then if they have more needs after seeing the guys in the system and saying, okay, this guy really can't do it, then they're going to go back out. So that was something that I thought was interesting with all kind of the hand-wringing about the defensive recruiting. There is a plan seemingly in place. They just got to execute the plan, but this has been thought out.
Right. And Golesh said it during the presser at some point, I don't remember when, essentially saying like, at this point you kind of had 2 options for how you were going to deal with the defense, knowing what it is. The first one is you basically get rid of those guys, you process them, you turn them over, whatever terminology you want to use, while you're also having to replace guys on offense at the same time. So you're having to just really just hit it a lot harder, or you can let it play out. I mean, these guys are Division I athletes for a reason, every single one of them, regardless of your thought about the defense last year. These guys are able to play Division I football and were recruited to play Division I football. And they kind of hinted at it that it might have been a scheme problem last year for the defense on top of not being healthy. And so, what if it turns around and says, oh, well, a guy like, CJ Ross really works well in this system, or a guy like Deontay Hunter, Nick Baggs gaining some weight and putting on some pounds. You have talent on that front 6, 7, however you want to categorize it, but you didn't have the immediate edge rusher, like outside linebacker hybrid position. And that's why they only went for those two. They probably feel like they have one guy on the roster already that can kind of fit into that scheme as well. But I mean, there's no reason to make a problem if you don't have a problem yet, I think is the best way to describe that issue. You don't have a depth problem. You have a full 3 deep for your entire defense right now. Don't make a problem out of nothing. Make a problem out of it after, if you know it's a problem.
Yeah, at this point, it's not a quantity issue. It's potentially a quality issue, right? But he kind of intimated that he wants to see these guys doing what they want them to do before he's ready to throw them out, basically. So I think that kind of goes to them, like you said. Maybe it was a scheme issue, or they weren't put in the best positions last year by the staff. He wants to see them doing what they do, and then they'll make that determination. So wanted to address the defensive side of things because I know people are freaking out about it, but there seems to be a plan, and it seems to be a well thought out plan. I marked this clip down as well. Let's see what it is.
I looked at true scholarship numbers to start, literally the day we got here, in terms of how we were allotted, in terms of how I wanted the roster to be built, and saw where the immediate holes were just truly numerically. I didn't look at statistics, to be honest with you. I did have an idea. I was being sarcastic. I actually knew that. So when you looked at the numbers of the holes we had to fill, for example, the number of O-linemen, right? We signed 8, and we're still under where we should be. So the reason for that being you're just short a bunch of numbers. Like we had 7 scholarship O-linemen here, right? Which is actually criminal in every way you can imagine on December 3rd when we got here. So you had 6 scholarship receivers after the changeover in guys coming and going. Just philosophically what the offense was, like defensively, we have 14 scholarship safeties. So when you build a roster with 14 safeties, you know how many safeties can play at the same time? 2. That would be complete negligence in terms of trying to recruit to fill a roster. So when you looked at pure numbers, like the starting point was recruiting the numbers to fill the scholarships. With the focus being, don't just fill a scholarship to fill a scholarship. Make sure that you're getting guys that are either A, ready-made starters, or B, guys that you can develop to be ready-made starters. So
that B, key. And also, God, he's so fucking charismatic.
He really is.
I was actually being sarcastic, you fucking idiot.
And then I think the other concern that I've seen is regarding where the recruits are from this last cycle. Because the February signing window, I don't think they signed a single player on scholarship from Florida. Right?
I mean, if you want to count Jaquan,
I don't.
He's originally from Florida.
That's right.
He played high school in California. He's a Cali kid.
Yeah.
Now from Bradenton, the 941. I coached a kid named Xavion Smith at Palmetto that ran a 10-400 meters. I wonder if they're related. So Okay. I'll have to do some digging on that now that I know it's from Bradenton. Okay. This is where he talks kind of about the geography of the
You
class.
bring a staff in from all over the country. I think ties were just so everywhere that's why the class ended up how it ended up. We were able to finish on a handful of guys here in the last couple of weeks, which I thought was huge. Being able to get a big time quarterback to finish it off was really, really big. Couple of other spots wide out to finish that off in the last couple of weeks with a couple of guys that we think are true difference makers. Being able to get the O-lineman as of Monday and Drew Perez was really, really big for us. And then we got some spots we feel like we have holes to fill here at the end in April and May. But I told the staff again this morning, I think we're going to be better than we think in terms of what's here. There's a bunch of guys that didn't play that are going to have their shot with a clean slate this spring. And like I said, I think that when we go recruit in the spring, that'll be the first time we feel like we actually truly know what we have. And so you can really laser focus what you need and go attack it. So that's.
And then for the last clip I wanted to play was Steve spoke about the charisma. The opening line of the press conference was just excellent.
All right. Well, super exciting. We've got
just it's the cool history teacher. It's the cool history teacher vibe.
Yeah.
Well, super exciting. That sounds like I was up there.
I know. I mean, I was like, man, Seth, are you sure you're not Alex Golesh? He's the cool history teacher who lets you like sneak off campus and go grab McDonald's because you were running late for first period. That's absolutely the vibe he gives off. Let's dissect or at least talk about. I mean, I think the two big guys that we need to discuss that signed and committed today, quarterback Israel Carter out of California. Izzy Carter, he's by all accounts, a top-notch quarterback. And we talked about his film. If you're watching on Twitch, I mean, good God. If you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, you just saw what we saw, him hurling defender in the open field for a touchdown. And he's got a pretty good arm to boot. And the beautiful thing about this is I didn't know the connection is Hendon Hooker and Izzy Carter's QB coach are the same person. They're one and the same. So as Hendon Hooker preps for the NFL and his next step in life, he's out in California training with the guy who's been training and coaching Izzy Carter. So you get the connection there. With Hendon Hooker being able to tell him, okay, this is what the offense looks like, and this is who Alex Golesh is actually like. And Golesh kind of talked about that today. Like, I wish I could lie to him, but we were 1-11 and our defense sucked, but offensively we're all right. And this is who I am. I mean, this guy's ridiculously fast. Holy crap.
Yeah, he's got a great tape. That's what I don't. It really seemed like that this was a guy that Golesh would have liked to recruit to Tennessee, but kind of, ended up getting the number one quarterback in the country instead. So, but it seemed like this is a guy he's had his eye on for a while. I thought his story about recruiting him was really fun and kind of showed something of the staff. Basically, when he first got the job, he reached out to him, and he wasn't really having him, and he kept reaching out to him. And then finally, around Christmas time, after the change had been made in Arizona State, and they probably, he probably realized that they might be trying to process him out. They started talking, and they were able to get him on campus. Now I think we've got definitive proof of what in and out Alex Golesh was at. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's confirmed. This is the most ridiculous clip on the thing. This one here. Let me run this just for everyone. The running back's not slow. I think this is the most ridiculous clip on the entire tape. If we could stop and watch this real quick. Yeah, that's pretty nuts. So Golesh basically kept working him, got him on campus, and then like you were talking about, Nate had that Hendon Hooker connection where he could say, "Hey, man, ask him. Like I can't tell you we're going to do this, this, and that. You can ask the dude right here, and he'll tell you. I can't really, I'm not going to be able to fake you because then you can just ask Hendon Hooker and he'll give you the truth." So that was a nice, interesting wrinkle and a good story, kind of being persistent and not being afraid to go out and take a shot at this guy.
This is a big fish, absolutely. By the way. This isn't like 3-star quarterback. Like this is a dude. This is I don't know how he's only a 3-star. I've scoured how the rankings are tabulated and everything.
I think he's like 5'10" would be my guess.
Yeah, there's something that these sites don't like about him. He's so freaking good. He fits every bill that you want in a quarterback, and there's flashbacks to the great quarterbacks that USF has had with how efficient this guy runs a dual threat offense. I mean, it's so great, and he comes from a power program too. I feel like that's part of it as well. Centennial is not like a Joe Schmo school out in California. This is one of the top public institutions out there, and he was leading this team week in and week out, and
he was also a guy that was willing to split time. Mm-hmm. There was another quarterback there as well, so the fact that he was willing to do that shows like a good team player as well. So there's some really good stuff here with him. I think
and his work ethic too. They talked about how he's like a consistent learner kind of thing. I think he probably knows, and I think it was probably, the expectations were laid that like, hey, Izzy, we don't expect you to play next year, but we expect you to play for 4 years here kind of thing.
Yeah. And they got it. He's listed at 6'1", but I'm trying to figure out why he's not a Power 5, why he's not a Power 5 guy. So my guess would be watching this, maybe he's a little bit shorter than he's listed.
Could be. Get those extra tall cleats on him.
Yeah. But he's in the 24/7 composite. He's the 33rd ranked quarterback. On three's got him as the 20th ranked quarterback in the country. And we talked about this last night, Steeg. In the on three rankings, he's the highest rated quarterback commit in the state of Florida. Florida State's was 23rd. Miami's was 33rd. He's 20th. So, according to one recruiting site, this is the best guy in his school in the state of Florida signed this year.
How about that domino effect, by the way, of Jaden Rashada?
Rashada to Arizona State.
I mean,
to Arizona, because that's basically what this boiled down to was and I've read a little bit about Izzy and his situation and everything, and his commitment to Arizona State this entire time was very driven on the fact that he knew that, Arizona State was going to bring in some transfer quarterbacks and everything. But, for Kenny Dillingham and his staff, they felt like, this was a guy for them. And then the Jaden Rashada thing happened. Rashada said he wanted to stay closer to the West Coast, and Arizona State stepped in. And frankly, if it's, Rashada or if it's Izzy Carter, I mean, statistically, you're probably going to go after Rashada if you're Arizona State. And that's probably where USF kind of slid in and was like, hey, you remember me? I've been DMing you for the past 2 months.
And even I think even if you don't think, you're like, okay, excuse me, they didn't really beat Arizona State for this guy. You did have like a Tulane program that got him on campus that really wanted him, that just won the Cotton Bowl and beat USC. So you're able to go in and at least beat them out, and get a really productive player.
Yeah. I mean, again, when he signed, he was the highest ranked recruit in the class. He's the highest ranked quarterback USF has signed since Quentin. And keep in mind, that was about 10 years ago. So the recruiting rankings have changed and adjusted and whatnot. So, take that with a grain of salt as well. But, by all indications, phenomenal, fucking phenomenal. It would have been the gym, would have been like just the cherry on top of the day if, another guy didn't sign.
Yeah, and I believe he's only thrown 2 interceptions in his career. At least the last 2 seasons, he's only thrown 2 interceptions.
Oh yeah.
Really interesting player. I'm when I first threw his tape on, because I was like, okay, USF's watching me throw. You saw that. I was like, okay, this guy can throw a little bit. It's pretty good looking stuff. All right, let's throw on his film. Maybe he's just like a run around guy or something that's learning how to throw. No, man, this dude can play. So I was shocked that this was an option, and the fact that they closed it is a really good sign. And I think it also goes to show how this offense, if they can kind of approximate what they were doing at Tennessee, the style of offense. And, this is why when they were looking for a head coach, we talked about finding a scheme guy, because then they can recruit to the scheme, which is something they've been able to do. They recruit guys that fit their scheme. But also, if you have this kind of fun, big-time scheme, guys want to play in it. And that's kind of what he said. Izzy Carter wants to play in this offense. And that's what kind of attracted him to it. So,
oh, yeah.
That's, if you can kind of approximate that, I think you're going to be able to get skill guys left and right on the offensive side of the ball.
No shortage of it.
And they're not slowing down trying to go after big fish either.
No, absolutely not. And I think a guy that he's going to enjoy throwing to in the future here is Jaquan Smith, who signed and committed earlier Wednesday, and then officially announced later in the day. Izzy Smith is fast. Jimmy Horn was fast. Jaquan Smith is he may be able to go plaid. This dude boot scoots and boogies. If we're going to be real here, let's take a quick look at his tape. And I did read somewhere, I think it was Rivals, that he may be able to run track at USF as well. So that is also an added bonus. Because, to be fair, the track and field's getting better, cross country is getting a little bit better, but the actual running part of track has really kind of failed. USF's been decent in the last few years at the field part, but the actual running around the track has been a little difficult. So it'll be an added bonus. I think that really being able to reload the weapons, and as we've talked about, Seth, as we led up to today, they like verified speed.
It certainly seemed like it, right? A lot of the guys, even the PWO they got from Lehigh, is 10,900 meters guys. So a lot of the offers, you looked in their profiles and they had track times. And so they're going after verified speed, which I think is smart. And that's kind of I think it's something out of the Saban tree that's kind of trickled its way throughout. Is just like, let's get that verified speed number. And if they're not, I think they're doing a pretty good job of doing like height, length, verified speed, which is kind of that was kind of Saban's big recruiting thing. That's kind of seems there are some teams that's how they recruit, is height, length, verified speed are kind of the three of their biggest measurables they like to look at. And if you're watching,
this clip is absolutely ridiculous. By the way,
we've got some verified speed here.
Just go back to this for a second, because that was like Jaquan's film is some of the most ridiculous film that I've seen from a high school prospect in a long time. But this play in particular is just absolutely stupid. First off, that corner is playing at least 17 yards off of him. Because he can blow the top off. Yeah. 3 guys surround him, and he blows past them with no added effort at all. I mean, it's just ridiculous how good, how fast he is. He's strong as hell too. This isn't like he's just, a fast guy and, can't break tackles or anything like that. Like, they had him playing running back and just running him up the gut. Like, it became affectionately what I call the Derrick Henry Yulee offense, where, you have this guy that's really fucking good if you can just get the ball in his hands. So the quickest way to get the ball in his hands is just snap it to him. Like, surprise.
Yeah.
I know, and I don't like to compare, guys from that left and what happened and everything like that. But for USF fans, the immediate draw is, oh shit, we lost Jimmy Hort, our speedy guy. We lost Brian Matee, our speedy running back. Like we lost speed there. And then you just replaced him like that with a guy who's verified faster than both of them and bigger than both of them.
Yeah, he's an interesting another guy that had some big offers that for whatever reason seemed to be slipping through, and they were able to go in and snag him. So another great job identifying a guy you could go get and then getting him on campus and closing. Because the final three was Utah, Washington, and USF, and USF gets the player. That's pretty good.
Yep, and we don't even need to pretend if Utah and Washington were still in it, but 4 years down the road, no one will remember that maybe he wasn't a take at the other places, or that's what Utah fans and Washington fans will tell themselves as he goes for 1,500 yards next season. So we'll see. I do know that we had some questions. We asked for some questions.
We did have one more. We did have one more player.
Oh yeah, Tyree. How could I forget? My bad. Tyree Kelly.
He was the dark horse that nobody mentioned. Andrew Ivins didn't mention, but our very own Sean mentioned last night. This was a possible flip candidate.
I want to just mention though, real quick, so that it's not lost in the shuffle. I tossed that name out there 2 days ago in the Discord. And I said, just tossing this one out there because I'm seeing some tea leaves.
Look at you. Look at us.
And you beat out your old OC for him.
Shuck it, Trickett.
Stuffing Travis into a locker.
Do I need to put that up?
Did you have it?
I can get it. The old OC. What'd you do to him? Stuffed him in a locker.
Mean. I mean, that's such good for us, but man, that felt good.
Yeah. I feel bad. It's like, what meme is it where the guy's like holding the gun and is like crying like as he got about to shoot him? Is that from like Juice or something? I honestly I've never seen the movie. I know the meme.
Is it Wesley Snipes crying?
I think it is Wesley Snipes. Yes. Yeah. It's like if we had sent that out publicly on Twitter, that was going to be my response. Like, this is how I felt approving this one on the Twitter.
That's how I felt copy and pasting it together. All right, let's get to the player that he got stuffed into that locker for. Tyree Kelly. Interesting. So, I call him Tyree. His mama named him Tyree. I call him Tyree.
He's Tyree.
I thought interesting before we get to tape, some of his numbers, if these are accurate. 6'3", 190. He looks kind of that big on film. 13 reps of 185. Pretty good for a taller, thinner receiver. So he's got some interesting weightlifting numbers. So he may be a guy that's strong. He went to the FSU Elite Camp. Bud Elliott did a write-up, and he included him as a guy that performed really well. In his write-up, he kind of thought he may turn into a tight end because he's got such a big frame. And he's not crazy fast, but it's hard to tell. If you go look at his junior tape, he looks slower than he does on the senior tape. But he's a big, tall guy that's pretty smooth. He doesn't look real slow. Like it's not like people are really catching him from behind either. So this guy's 6'3", seemingly does a pretty good job going up and getting it, and he seems to run away from people in Georgia. Get off me. Pretty good right there.
He also,
a little
just
step
if you want to stop, actually, it's gone there now, but we have to address the elephant in this room of Cairo High School syrup makers is the name of this school, which if you could guess it, if you could believe it, he is not the first Cairo syrup maker to attend the University of South Florida. He joins a legacy. the Stephen Bench legacy of syrup maker USF Bulls.
I mean, Bench was impactful.
That dude,
great guy. Love Stephen Bench. I think the few times he was on the podcast, gosh, this must have been 2016, and I think he wrote for us a couple of times. The insight that he has on the game of football is next to none. It's pretty great, and I'm glad we got another Cairo dude. Hopefully he's as fun.
He's got a fun highlight tape, that's for sure. He's also plays basketball, plays center for the basketball team. So he's in there down low, banging for rebounds. So I think he's got some physicality. So he's not just kind of a flash guy. You see a nice hands catch there, and then just that smoothly pulling away from people. So a guy that kind of a late riser, seemingly. How much did that cost to get syrup makers across the end zone? That's a lot. That's a long name.
Worth every penny. every cent of that is absolutely worth it. Oh, I just got corrected on something. Oh God, I should have known this actually. Thank you to the person that just told me this, because he will remain anonymous for my own sake. It's Cairo, not Cairo.
Okay, so I heard a guy on the news say Cairo, and I was like, is this guy wrong? So I just tried not to say it.
No, it is Cairo. He is right. I should have known that off the top.
Well, that's not as cool.
I don't want the people from Georgia upset with me.
Oh, you got a little safety? I mean, I don't think they need any more safeties apparently, but if you need one, there's a little film right there.
15 safeties on the roster now.
just in case you needed one more. But yeah, no, I think Andrew, I think you're right. Oh, I like that. He doesn't have to have verified speed. If he's like, you can have different body types. I've heard people say you want it like a basketball team. You want to have, you want to have some big power forward type bodies. You want to have some smaller guard type bodies. That's kind of the best receiver rooms, where you have the smaller, quick guys. You have some bigger guys. Maybe they're not super fast, but just gives different looks to the defense. So, yeah, I'm not super worried about his speed because he's a big guy that goes up and gets it, and he doesn't look stiff. That's the other thing. Like, USF's got some bigger guys that had speed, but they were super stiff in the past. I'm thinking of that 2019 team. Like, you had guys that looked like they were made by Boston Dynamics, trying to stop and cut. It was.
These guys are fluid.
So he's a bigger, more fluid guy. So I think even without the verified speed, at least he's a little bit smoother than some guys that may be faster but can't really get in and out of breaks. So a nice late addition there. And I think he was the only other one to sign today, right?
Yeah, you had guys like Gerald Ademo and Drew Perez.
And if you guys want to see their film, we talked about them and showed film and watched them last night. So check back through the archive here on YouTube or Twitch, and you can see that.
Yeah, I think it was only those three surprises. They were in it for a couple of other guys, but I don't like Desario Riles, like you mentioned, and late DJ Holmes out of Pahokee. But I think the staff knew that, those guys were both reaches. Desario went to Indiana and DJ went to Ole Miss. So I think they kind of knew that they were out of it from the get-go. So they weren't too terribly concerned. And like I said, they've already addressed what they felt like were the immediate needs on defense. Both of those guys were defensive linemen. So, they would have been nice to haves, but not need to haves in this case.
Yep. Let's answer some Discord questions. A little rapid fire. We swore we wouldn't go long tonight, yet here we are, 45 minutes in. Typical us.
We just try too hard. We can't help it.
Yeah.
We could have just thrown up the film, talked real fast, and been out here in 20 minutes, but
I just like looking at Seth.
It's just not our nature.
I mean, I get that for sure. Let's see. From the Discord, this is from JFlow. Do you predict any of the new freshmen being significant contributors this season? And then there's a follow-up, but let's hit this one first. Any freshmen being significant contributors? My first guess is Jaquan Smith. I think he's probably the guy I would reckon is probably best in line, just by sheer numbers. They've got to throw it to somebody.
Yeah. And I think he's got a skill that's instantly translatable. He's already got elite speed. That translates right now. So that's something. And he could return kicks. So I think he's probably I think he would be the guy I would pick as well. I think was in the first signing day I said the long snapper.
Right.
Well, now I think this guy can probably get on the field quickly. So,
and Golesh even addressed that. He's like, it was a round robin, I think is the term he used for long snappers. So now you get one of the best long snappers in the country, in his opinion, out of Cardinal Mooney. So
Cardinal Gibbons.
Shoot, excuse me. Goodness gracious, we are just atrocious at high school.
Terrible.
You're thinking of your boy, the walk-on quarterback. He's from Cardinal Mooney.
Bulldog. Too many Catholic Cardinals.
He's from Cardinal Mooney.
There it is.
Bulldog from Cardinal Mooney. Debuck from Cardinal Gibbons.
Yeah, I think they did that on purpose.
Yeah.
But Steve, you agree, Jaquan, or is there someone else?
Yeah, I was trying to think of maybe Jarvis Lee got on the field a little bit. I doubt they're going to throw James Jenkins or Milakovic out there on the offensive line. The running back room is too loaded for Jalen Johnson to make an impact. And by God, I love Izzy. Izzy's going to be fantastic. I hope Izzy doesn't play next year, unless it's fourth quarter and we're up 65-0, and we've already exhausted our other two quarterbacks. But yeah, I mean, wide receiver is that position that, if a guy's going to make an impact on the field, it's going to be at probably wide receiver in some sort of capacity.
Yep. And then the second part of J Flow's question is also, despite every position being wide open, QB1 for this year is probably just a battle between Bohannon and Brown, right? I would think so. I think the good sign for Gary is Golesh has mentioned him almost anytime he could. He said that he was a fantastic recruiter for Izzy Carter, good host, and I think that's what you want from your older guys. He's still rehabbing his shoulder injury. He's going to be out for the spring, so it's really basically a three-man weave, so to speak, through spring practice with Byron Brown, Bryce Archie, and Gunnar Smith, with Trey Marsh still recovering from his neck surgery, Gary with his shoulder, and then Izzy not coming in until I think May 1st, I believe, is what Golesh said Wednesday afternoon in his presser. So I think it's still 1A, 1B. I feel confident in either one of them. Yeah.
I mean, and I feel like it's going to be more open than what last year's was. I truly do believe that it was an open competition, but I just truly felt like one quarterback was significantly better than the other. And judging by what I've heard, the suspicions are true on that. So, at this point, it truly is wide open because you know what you're getting with Byron Brown. You know what you're getting with Gary. Both of them have cemented themselves into significant playing roles and everything like that. And I think both of them actually want QB1 and would be fine with QB2. And I'll end it at that.
Correct. I think that's probably a good way to put it for now. Plus, these things always have a way of working themselves out. Next question here. This is from Drew Greenbull. How did the others in the new conference do after the transfer window, early signing day, national signing day? Who loaded up? What team should we be on lookout for? I know in the current iteration of the American, without the new teams, SMU had a pretty good signing period. I think by average, I think they're the highest in the conference. And then with the 6 teams coming in, I think UTSA also had a very, very good signing period, and they may be the top one overall. I mean, you can just you get your mid 3 stars to stay in Texas, and you're kind of okay.
According to On3, I think they're one of the only sites that has the new AAC. Just in terms of rank, they're 6th just in terms of their rankings. In terms of average player, they're 5th, which is pretty close to Memphis. Just about tied with Memphis and Tulane for 3rd. So they're in the upper part of the conference, upper half at least. But that's according to On3. So that's one site. I don't know if that's their composite, but they do have it. They have I think they have UTSA at the top, SMU, Tulane, Memphis up there.
Yeah,
UTSA, Memphis, SMU, Tulane, Temple, and USF is their top 6. But there's not in UTSA seems to be out in front, but again, that's being able to recruit their area. But SMU did a good job in the portal as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, SMU really benefited from their head coach coming from Miami, I think they took like 8 guys from Miami, but either the University of or just the Miami neighborhoods and high schools. So that's always a good strategy, especially when the DFW area can kind of get overfished. You might as well, go to a new pond and spark those relationships up a little bit. I'd also like to give a special shout out to the guys from Charlotte. Biff Poggi, is it Poggi or Poggi?
I think Poggi. Biff
Poggi basically walked into that Charlotte roster and said, "Fuck this shit." They have at the numbers, and I'm giving away private information from their side of things, but they have 37 guys signed, which is a lot. They have 50 total commitments. They're turning over essentially that entire team, that entire roster from like top to bottom. So I'm interested to watch what that team does. I don't know if it's going to be good, if it's going to be effective. They took a fuck ton of transfers, man. They took any and every transfer that they
Will Healy, what did you do?
Yeah, seriously. Because, if he walked in and said, "This shit stinks," and took out the trash, something's got to have gone wrong there. So that's just another interesting one to watch. But again, I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad to take 50 commits. But I was really upset when they got the 50th commit, when the Charlotte 49ers went from 49 commits to 50. It was upsetting. And I think it was a kicker too. It's terrible.
I saw a question up there. Let me see where I just had it in the chat here from Nick Nixie. Is this class better than the class Jeff Scott would have had if he didn't get canned? It's tough to say. So there's only 7 decommits, I guess, per 247 from this class. Anthony Miller Jr., the highly touted tight end out of Georgia, he ends up at Indiana. And his 87 overall would make him the 3rd best recruit in the class, which is pretty good. Running back DJ Oliver obviously went to West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. Connor Knight ends up at UAB. Daryl Sweeting ends up at Temple. Braden Ramey, I believe, is at FAU. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you could theoretically say 2 guys went up a level, and then everybody else kind of stayed the same. That's pretty fair. I mean, literally everybody else outside of Miller and DJ Oliver, who I think we can all agree USF was punching above their weight class on both of those guys. Those guys are going to be fun to watch in college, but everybody else was kind of in the same level. Literally everybody else is in the new AAC. So there's that.
Yeah, and if you compare it to last year, 4 of the top 6 guys comparing to last year are in the 23 class. Michael Williams still has the highest overall rating between the two classes, but then Eddie Kelly would be the other one from last year's class if we're talking about high schoolers. And then you'd have Jaquan Smith, Israel Carter, Jarvis Lee, and James Jenkins, and probably Nikola Milovac as well. So really like 5 of 7 are probably the top end of your class this year is a lot better than it was last year. And it seems to be deeper. And then as you mentioned, it seemed to be there were a couple pretty big names at the top, but then after that there wasn't a ton. So I think you're probably in a better spot now than you were or would have been.
Yeah, and the thing, and I know
those guys may decommit if your coach wins one game. You know, they may decommit because you're probably going to get fired next year. So,
right. But for the rankings and how they are versus this year versus last year, I think first off that there's like 3 guys that are still like not ranked fully, like Tyree Kelly and Keyshawn Singleton and someone else aren't like fully ranked. So that kind of takes like a notch down because those average out at like a 0. Technically, they negatively affect. But looking at USF's class last year, and the benefit of it was that the transfer portal rankings really favored USF last year. Regardless of your opinion on how Jeff Scott used the transfer portal to address immediate needs, getting guys like Gary Bohannon, getting guys like Rashad Cheney. Jatorian Hansford, Yusuf Terry, like a bunch of other guys, like they all like recruiting wise and transfer wise were good. They were really good. And that's kind of the nature of how Jeff Scott was recruiting. And that's what they kind of really wanted. Simmons still isn't ranked. The transfer from.
If you're looking at 24/7, like the overall class grade, they don't really. I don't think they count the transfers in there yet for USF. Because if you go look at like the AAC team rankings for transfers,
it's just high school kids.
It's 0. They've got a 0, so they're 123rd in the country in transfers. When we know they've got some pretty quality ones that would probably put them at least middle of the pack. So, 24/7, I don't think has been updated, at least on that end on the transfer side. So. That could be deceiving a little bit, and I'm not sure about On3 how updated that is as well. So I think it might if you're not, and I think somebody mentioned in here, if you're not like one of these big sites like the SEC sites where people are paying a ton of money and really they've got a bunch of members or a big Ten school,
right?
They're not in a super rush. They can kind of lag on the smaller sites. So. The ranking may lag a little bit behind, and we may kind of come to get what it truly is a little bit later on. And they may also, it may not really matter until the summer because after you still have that other portal period where they may add some more guys. But to me, and this, it seems like the class is better at the top end. And I like to look at kind of who are you beating for these players. And who's giving them legitimate offers. Now, maybe by the end, they kind of recruit over them. But these guys had legitimate offers at P5 schools for most of the process. So that's pretty good, I think. And I don't think your recruiting would have been quite as well with a potential lame duck coach going into year 4, having won, maybe an extra game. So let's give them 2 games. I don't think your recruiting would have skyrocketed off that.
Right. Yeah. I know that there was a question from earlier that was asked, kind of comparing how, and I think this is a good conversation to have as well. I know we're at an hour, but comparing how this transition class was compared to Jeff Scott's first class, his transition class. And kind of how they stack up against each other, not just in philosophy, but also, metric wise. I think you're looking at two very different styles because of two very different introductions into the program, where Jeff Scott, as I mentioned, was kind of just filling, scholarship counts at that point, trying to get guys in regardless of who they were. Meanwhile, Golesh, while looking at the scholarship count as well, realized immediate needs. And, you can kind of say, okay, yeah, they needed to, get some offensive linemen in there. But, you were still able to pull some good guys from that transition class from Jeff Scott's. Brian Batee, kind of your crown kingpin there.
Oh man, looking back at this, and holy smokes, it is not great.
Right. Because it was again
not,
a bunch of,
and that was kind of one of our things of why are they not getting a lot better? Because that first class, they did not have very many impact players. Jeff Scott's first class, I mean, who was the most impactful guy?
Brian Batee.
And he was a holdover. Like, who's the guy that Scott went out and got that was impactful?
Tramel Logan? Amari Dawson?
But Dawson kind of ended up never really getting there.
Holden Willis was kind of coming on late.
He was this year.
If we're talking straight up high school, or do you want transfers as well? Because I think Trey Jacobs is up there.
But he was like super late. Like he wasn't even in that first initial period. Didn't he transfer like right before the season? Something bizarre because it was weird that he was playing against Notre Dame.
Late. Yeah.
He like transferred during camp or something almost.
He transferred in July 29th, 2022.
Yes, he came in super late. So
that was if I recall,
it was a great
an academics thing.
Yeah. Just kind of looking back at this. I mean, this is basically looking back at Charlie Strong's transition class as well. So here, they're rough, and this is why I, kind of say transition classes are always tough. So being able to get the kind of quality that he got. So the highest ranked high school recruit Jeff Scott scored coming out in that transition class was Trey Marsh at a 85.58. And then his next highest was Jordan Smith. Sorry, Steeg. Ben Knox. So just kind of going down. I'm just going to go down the list of these transition guys. Trey Marsh, big arm, never really put it together. Now he's hurt. Jordan Smith transferred out. Ben Knox, injury prone, hasn't been able to put it together. Amari Dawson transferred out. Tramel Logan, I think, is probably in a better shape to be more impactful in this kind of defense as an edge rusher. Cesar Reyes transferred out. Mac Harris moved the linebacker, is going to be in the mix. Chris Townsell kind of got lost in the shuffle after his freshman year, and that's one that he's still trying to work his way back in. AJ Hamilton, same thing. Levante Camille stopped playing football altogether. Brian Batee is now at Auburn. Big win there. Holden Willis at Middle Tennessee. Sion Tatupo. I think he stopped playing football.
Too many kids.
Well, he left. He never got here, right? He had too many kids.
Never even got here. Uriah Green. Is Uriah Green on the? I don't even think he's on the roster.
No,
I think he
transferred to like South Carolina Upstate or something.
Sincere Brown transferred out. Trey Jacobs graduated. TJ Robinson still on the roster. Darian Felix graduated. Brinkman graduated.
I've forgotten about so many.
Thad Mangum graduated and is now a GA. Alex Valet transferred out. Devin Gill. Did he play? The linebacker.
No, he never made it to campus. Never made it to campus.
Noah Johnson. Just one of the 14 quarterbacks that they used that year. Jared Sackett couldn't beat out Spencer Schrader. Bo Peak never made it.
UTSA, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Bo Peak never made it to campus. Cade Fortin's now at Arkansas, but not in the traditional way of, hey, he played up and got to Arkansas.
He did throw a touchdown against LSU.
He did. So, like, that is a rough transition class. And then let's looking back at Charlie Strong's, that would be the 2017 class. Let me know. So Natron Culpepper transferred out. Kayvon Dingle got dismissed for rape allegations that the case got dismissed, and he is now suing the university for violation of his rights. So that's still up in the air. G. Marcellus transferred out. Nick Roberts transferred out. Meach Harris,
Good Lord,
played 17 years. Jabril Stevens transferred out. Bentley Sanders transferred out. Jannard Phillips transferred out. Randall St. Felix was asked politely to leave. Fred Lloyd transferred out. Darian Grant graduated. Michaela Point still playing somehow, right? Or did he graduate?
He graduated.
Kirsten Johnson transferred out. Donnell Thomas transferred out. Jeremiah Stafford transferred out. Kevin Kegler graduated. Chauncey Smart barely made it to campus. He was the track star. Duran Bell, that is an unfortunate one. That dude was going to be awesome. Tore his ACL, ended up at Alabama State, a.k.a. transferred out. Kelvin Pinckney graduated. They've got Dave Small, who's a walk-on. Bryce Miller transferred out. Troy Fields, AJ Franco, Andrew Mims, Cody Gentry.
Andrew Mims transferred out.
I think he did. Those two transfer classes are horrendous, and you wonder why the team's depth sucked and why the teams have sucked for 6 years. It's you can't whiff that poorly year one. You just can't do it. There's no coming back from that.
It's your foundation.
It truly is. This is the start of getting your guys in place, and that's what you bring in. Good luck to you. Good luck.
And there's some of those guys that, if Strong stays, might stay, and maybe there's not as much turnover, and it's a little bit not the bottom doesn't fall out quite as bad, but that's the other part of like coaching transitions. Guys leave. You're seeing that this year, all the receivers left, but it seems like they did a good job kind of trying to replace those guys and try to replace their skill sets too.
And so this is Taggart's transition class we've talked about. So Charlie Strong had a winning culture coming into, and that was his transition class. Jeff Scott did not have a winning culture. Willie Taggart clearly did not have a winning culture coming into it. So this was his transition class, the 2013 class. Mike White transferred out. Turns out he's an NFL quarterback. Lamar Robbins, I think he got dismissed, if I'm not mistaken, but he was a vital part of the defense for quite a while. Derek Callaway, I'm fairly certain couldn't make it to campus. I think he got Hillsborough on the Harvard on the Hillsborough. Deidre Sanat seems like he's an NFL player. Dominique Threet was just an absolute stalwart at offensive line during like the fun years at USF. Nigel Harris was an NFL player. Kennard Swanson, just another guy who would have been fantastic if he had some addiction issues that kind of overtook him that led him to being kicked off the team. Jeremy Hall, another top-notch offensive lineman. Stephon McCray, injuries kind of sapped him. Nate Godwin, one of like the OG guys of the Bull Sharks, I think, and now he's like on OnlyFans, so good for him. Cam Ruff, he was a Remington Award semifinalist. Eric Mays went from defensive end to your starting left tackle. Ramon Swain, I don't think he even made it to campus from Butler. Mitchell Wright, same thing. Mike Love, NFL player. Darius Whitty didn't make it. Hassan Childs got kicked off the team for shooting into a car. Darius Tice, big fan of him. Zach Benjamin, he transferred out. Bruce Hector, another NFL guy. Johnny Ward is still floating in space after Nick Sharga sent him in 2016. Torrell Safford, pretty good. Emilio Nadelman, top-notch kicker, one of the best ones we've had in the last like 15 years. Augie Sanchez, I don't know what he's been up to, but he's the all-time leading tackler at USF history. That's Willie Taggart's transition class.
Seminole. That's what he's doing.
And that leads to success. I think there was 5 NFL guys on that transition class. That's how you do it. So
that's pretty good.
If this Golesh class can do that, we're in good shape. If it's anything like Charlie Strong or Jeff Scott, then we'll know in about 2 years, oh man, we're about to have to hit the reset button again, aren't we?
Yeah.
And with that,
it's all starting to make sense, isn't it?
It's so weird if you don't.
When I
end the NFL,
me as someone that wasn't really paying attention back then knows more of the names you listed from the Taggart class than the Strong class and almost the Jeff Scott class when I was paying attention. That says something.
Yes, it does.
No.
I think Golesh is closer to Taggart than he is Strong and or Jeff Scott. I think they both have a swagger to them that I think is needed as a young head coach. I think it resonates with these players. You can't be a stiff. And if you are a stiff, you better come from a winning culture, a winning team, and you better have the logo behind it to make it matter. And that's why Jeff Scott failed, and that's why Charlie Strong failed. He was a stiff. Nice guy, but a stiff. But with that, we've gone an hour and 11 minutes. We swore we were only going to do like 30, 45. But here we are once again, giving you more content than ever expected. It's been a fun ride through this signing period. We'll have more for spring ball coming up in like a month. For now, it's winter workouts, making sure they get these hashtag gains. And we'll keep you updated with everything else going on. Steeg, I don't know when you and Vita are doing the weekend roundup or the athletics roundup. We'll have that figured out and announced at some point. But we'll have that at some point this week, if not Sunday.
We get to talk about a men's basketball win. That's exciting.
How about it?
Don't look into the numbers.
Nearly blew a 23-point lead, but other than that, it was great.
It was a win.
All right. For Seth, Steeg, I have been Nathan. Thanks for tuning in.
Get in the Discord.
Get in the freaking Discord.
We're over 120 people in there now. Good community forming there. No a-holes just yet. So no trolls. It's like the best parts of Twitter without the trolls. It's really good stuff. Constant flow of communication. Today was a really, really good day in there. We had a ton of messages in the recruiting side. Steeg and Sean have been all over this cycle. They called some of this stuff a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So if you're in there, today shouldn't have been the first day you heard about these guys. So jump in there, get inside info like that. We're having a lot of fun in there. So
yep,
and it's grown quite a bit. Started it less than a month ago. We're over 120 now, and it just keeps going. So
yep. Absolutely. I appreciate it, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining on. Andrew, I appreciate it. This court is legit. You said it last night, and you'll say it again. Damn straight. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Bulluminati podcast. Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.